All right. I'm glad you stop telling me that dirty joke, Joe, because we're alive now. So, all right.
All right.
Welcome everybody to Writers Fix Problems. I'm Scott McCullough. This is Joe Dolio, and we are here. Normally we have a topic about writing to talk about, and uh, is that coming through yours, Joe?
What is it?
I just getting an echo.
What is it? I hear some
No,
sound in the background.
that's
Not
coming
me.
through.
I'm trying to download these photos for the stream, but it's not going quite the way that I want.
I don't know what's going on with that.
Stream, but it's not going quite the way that I want.
That's so weird. I'm getting like the feedback in the actual system itself, and rather than I just muted both of us, and it still came through.
I'm
Okay.
trying.
Anyway, I figured it out. So anyway, so we are talking about. Normally, we have a topic that we talk about with our writers panel, and we should have some other folks joining us. But today, we're talking about the closeout for Doorkickers, which is at the end of its first 30 days. And we're also going to talk about just some stuff that's going on in the world. There's always, these are a lot of kind of the things that writers focus on to come up with ideas. But, they're also just important to talk about. And I have such a wise panel of people. Um, oh, let's see. Mike's in the chat. Hey, Mike, I see you there in the chat. Hit that hit that link. I'll send it to you. It should be in our group, our DM group, Mike. So I can send it to you individually. Hold on a second. Bear with me, folks. Bringing in another one of our guests here. Uh, got the writer extraordinaire Mike Bennett gonna jump on in here with us. Uh, hey Mike, I'm looking for you on Twitter, but it's in that group chat, that the DM group that we share. The link for this is right there. Just click on the StreamYards link and I'll jump you in. But I'll go ahead and look you up here and get the.
Yeah, Mike, you got to hit the one that says StreamYard, not the regular YouTube one.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna send you a DM, Mike, just so you got it. All right, it's in your DMs too, Mike. Just a solo DM from me. So when you get that, click on that StreamYard links and jump on in, man. But anyway, so I don't know about you, Joe, but like when I see the stuff that's going on in the world, I mean that like really gets my kind of gears turning, and I start asking those what if questions. And I
Oh
know
yeah,
from a standpoint of like your books, by the way, congratulations on the third in your series.
thank
I
you.
got Sapper Spy. We got Sapper Spy in the chat saying hello. Hello. Anyway, yeah, man, you did awesome with that third book. It just came out this week, and you just we were number one in like survival prep or something like that.
Yep,
Uh,
disaster and survival or something like that. But yeah, it's my third book in a row that's been number one in that category. So I
that's
try to every time.
that says a lot, man. I mean, you've got to have that kind of, you got to have people primed and ready to go in order to make that happen. A lot of times, you know,
Yeah.
things are a slow burn, but that just shows the dedication of your fans. So, man, that's something that we can all strive for. I remember, what was it? Speaking of survival people who kind of game the algorithm, I remember when James Rawls would have new books coming out on Survival Blog. He would do those book bomb days, like he would say, don't buy it until this day and then buy it on this day. And then we'll go to the top of the algorithm or whatever. And, I always thought that at the time I was like, who cares, as long as people are buying your book. But I guess it makes a difference.
It does matter. It does. I don't do those things. And actually, James Wesley Rawls is sort of a mentor. We go back and forth. I write on his survival blog every now and then, and good guy, very helpful.
Have you ever won any of his nonfiction writing contests? He's always have it on there.
I won a gift card, some like $25 Amazon gift card once, but that's it. I didn't get any cool stuff.
I always thought it was kind of cool. He literally always had like a writing contest going on, and so that probably guaranteed a steady stream of interesting, topics and stuff that came in. But
there's some interesting ones on there when people put them on there. Some of them are a little out there, but most of them are pretty solid. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's got definitely his heart and his mind in the right place when it comes to, how we do the whole prepper thing. And there's Mike. Mike is here now.
Hey guys.
Mike. All right. Sorry, man.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you. Mike, can you hear us?
Yeah.
You bear a striking resemblance to John Wayne in the Green Berets. The same.
He's my hero.
All right.
I tell you, that song, "The Ballad of the Green Berets," that's a great song.
Yeah.
Dude, I sing it like once a week. It just pops in my head for some reason.
What I usually do is I sing "Silver Wings Upon My Chest." Silver wings upon my chest, silver wing, and that's what I do. The whole song.
You just stay right there, huh?
That's where you realize, what is it? 100 men will test this day, but only 4.
I don't remember all that. All I remember is silver wings on my chest, and just keep saying
only 3 will get the Green Beret. That's right.
You will win the Green Beret.
Yeah. My brother gets to hear that about 50 times a day. So
it's all right. Nothing wrong with that.
Before we get too far down the rabbit hole that is the world around us, because man, it is a dumpster fire with many different elements to talk about.
With someone holding a match right over the top, yeah.
Amen, brother. I mean, I want to talk about the thing that we're here today to talk about, which is the Doorkickers closeout. All right. So today is the last day of the. Actually, I think you can see that we have 9 hours left in the first 30 days of Doorkickers Bad Medicine. This is my second Doorkickers book. We have. So I had 2 goals today. One is to hit 13K. We've already done that. And so thank you very much for supporting that goal. Maybe I shot too low. Maybe I should have said, we should get to 15K. But then maybe that would have been unrealistic. And then the other thing that I'm shooting for today is trying to get to 100 subs on the YouTube channel here. I think I'm at 87. At least I was a little while ago. So I've still got a little ways to go. So if you guys, if you guys find it in your heart, throw a message out there on Twitter or whatever, and invite your friends to come on over. And
so I have to send them this stream thing, right?
No, don't send the stream. The stream
that's for us to talk.
That's for us to join the
yeah.
Okay. What you want to send is that day 30. The tweet that says day 30
stream.
Yeah. And then that kind of directs them here. But I think you already sent that out last night.
I sent it out earlier today.
Earlier today, right? Yeah. No, last night for me. When I was tweeting with you guys last night, I literally crashed out right after that. So it's like the whole day goes by and then I wake up and I jump right on the stream. So because it is 9:15 in the morning here.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, we're doing Doorkick. I tell you that, guys, Doorkickers really did well this time. You know, Joe, like we were talking about with your book, how people just showed up on day one. You know,
Yeah.
here you know what, I can pull the curtain back a little bit on Doorkickers, and I'll show you guys some. Let's see. So this kind of shows the campaign activity. And as you can see, this is like where my sales came in. And as you can see here, like on day one when we launched, you know, I got
nice
$2,300, right? You know, that first day, and we had a pretty good taper. And then and so the interesting thing is always these are when I get on different, you know, YouTube shows, right? And so. And then it died down we had like 4 days of no sales because I wasn't able to do much with the YouTubes. And then I got on John Malin, who's another Comicsgate guy, his channel, and that blew us up again. And so we've had these kind of little peaks and valleys. And so here we are today, and I've made $127 today, and that's what pushed us over the edge. So, you know, if you're watching this and you're back Doorkickers, you're a part of this, right? You know, you really helped make this happen, and I want to say thank you. You know, like both of these guys I'm on stream with here today, who are also authors, we are very grateful for all the people who support our work. You know, put money on the barrel. I mean, you know, at least with Joe, if you buy his book on Amazon today, his third book, you'll get that book pretty quickly. But with you know, crowdfunders, it's a little different. You're putting money on the barrel today, but you may not get a book for potentially another year. Hopefully we'll get it to you sooner than that. But you know, that's a leap of faith that a lot of people don't realize. And you're not just buying a book, but you're funding my ability to make this book. Because I just don't have it, you know, I don't have deep enough pockets to be able to put cash on the desk and then order this book to happen. So you're making that happen, and I appreciate it. That's what crowdfunding comics is all about. You know, comics is a fairly affordable, you know, for all these rich people out there. Comics is a fairly affordable thing to get into, but the little guy still needs a little help, and that's what crowdfunding allows us to do. So I just want to say thank you. You know, Joe's lucky; he could just sit there and write his book. Same with Mike. You know, these guys are just that's all that goes into it. But with a comic, you got to pay all these people ahead of time, and you know, artists out there aren't drawing for free. So you know, that's money that I have to put down and make sure to get them to do that work. So. It's crowdfunding comics is what makes that happen. So I just wanted to acknowledge not just the success of Doorkickers, but also the faith and all these people who have put that both in me and the IP. Doorkickers is a fun franchise, and I hope everybody, you know, I got 5 people listening. I hope you guys have backed the campaign, and if you have, I appreciate you. And if you haven't, give it a look. I mean, I definitely guarantee a solid product. And you know, actually, Joe, we haven't looked at the actual campaign in a while. Maybe we should do that. Let's look at what these folks would get if let's see, view campaign. So everybody loves this iconic image, right? And I do too. But you know, so far it's just a cover, and it's also a print. If you're back the secret tier, you're going to be getting that as a print and also on a bookmark and a sticker. So we'll be releasing the final designs for all those products a little later in the campaign. But in the second 30 days, so in the first 30 days here, if you see this gallery here, that's the Xevious cover variant. Xevious is an awesome artist who I've met through Comicsgate, and I also like to call him my friend. And he really came out and did this cover. It was a kind of a last minute idea going into the campaign. Another friend suggested you should have a limited time variant cover, and I said, yeah, that's a great idea, but I don't have any art for one. And Zevius was right there. We were all on the same call when he said that. He said, "I'll do it for you." And I said, "Yeah, okay." I knew Zevius was an artist, but you try not to just take advantage of your friends and just assume that they'll do things for you. But man, he stepped up and he did awesome. I mean, look at this. I mean, Joe, look at that. The gear is spot on.
That's the cover I got because of her Brazilian flag.
Yeah. Well, so they're undercover, you see, in Brazil.
I like that one. Actually, I really do like that cover. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, MP7 is an underpowered
gear.
Yeah, gun, but at the same time, it makes sense that a gal would have this. I mean, let's face it, we're all sexist here. Girls just aren't as strong as guys, and if you're going to be humping a gun for a while, it's probably going to be something a little lighter than say,
that's a good point.
And so this is a perfect thing for her. She is not a operator. That's not her background, right? She comes from the world of spies and things like that, and intrigue. So she has more of a field agent kind of mentality. But she's now with this group of Doorkickers, and so while she's never the number one guy. She definitely is going through the door and helping out the team. So she's ready to go. And
we should never let my fans in the chat, because they're already in there with the "Where's her first aid kit?" because I'm always talking about first aid kit.
It's on the other side.
It's on her back. Yeah,
it's
right above her back.
Yeah, it's on her right side, lower right side. I mean, she's got the mags on the front and left, so she can one hand. So that's respectable. But no,
don't worry, Andrew. I will thoroughly search her and find her first aid kit for you.
What I want to know is what kind of first aid kit does she have?
No.
I guarantee you it's a Solitac PTK or a Kilo 5 kit.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Hey, I've talked to that guy and said, "Hey, I'd love to put one of your kits in my book." But
there you go.
It's that's a touchy topic. What's in your IFAK? Because I know a lot of people out there say, "Oh, there's no point in having a needle decompression needle or things like that in there. It should just be simple, quick and dirty." But
you know what it is, and what bothers me is when everybody says they're putting that decomp needle in there. Do you know how to use it?
Yeah.
Well, I watched a YouTube video, then take the needle out.
Yeah, the stuff is great to have if you've had the training.
Yeah, right. Please don't put stuff in your. I put it in my book, my very first book. Don't put things in your first aid kit that you don't know how to use.
Absolutely.
Even when I was when I was a grunt, I mean, we were trained on needle decompression. Now that being said, I don't know how happy I would be if one of my my 19-year-old whoos was trying to poke a needle in my chest. But at least he had the training, right? Well, the idea also is that we have medics, in the big army in a platoon or something like that, or even in a smaller a group of 18 series guys going through the door. They have specialized medical people, and the IFAK is not for you to use on other people. The IFAK is for people to use on you, right? So the supplies are right there. And so, instead of giving that medic 15 needle decompression things, you put one needle decompression with the guy, and the medic who is trained and knowledgeable in that task goes over and is able to use it. Buddies start the first aid, then the medic shows up, makes a secondary assessment, and then goes ahead and continues that initial first aid. And if so usually it's an experienced medic who is making that call. So Joe, you're spot on.
But in preparedness, it's totally the opposite, right? So in preparedness, I can have my kit that's for myself, but I don't have somebody else who's going to run up and use it on me. I've got to be able to use it on myself. So.
Exactly. So it's only what you know how to use, and it's not. You can be a little aspirational, but I wouldn't get too far ahead of the curve on that one.
I guarantee you are not needle decompressing yourself. It's not going to happen. If it gets to the point where you need one, you can't do it because you can't breathe.
it's too late, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So anyway, that cover is only available today. As soon as when we're done with the stream and I up the net cover will be gone, and so we'll be into the second 30 days, and we'll have some different stuff available in the second 30 days. We won't announce everything immediately. We'll kind of roll that out over the next couple of days. But I'm just saying, Joe, if you ever wanted a T-shirt that had some badass stuff on it, the next 30 days may be your option there. So we'll have
You
to see how
haven't
that
taken
goes.
enough money from me, man.
Well, I mean, I'm a humble merchant that is always looking to make a sale.
Nice. Okay, I'll watch.
Oh, Mike, I haven't plied you as much as I have Joe. I mean, Joe's been very generous to this campaign, and what Joe is not telling you about this gal on here. As soon as he saw that cover, he backed it immediately. So I'm just saying, he probably likes it better than maybe he's.
I think he likes her.
Hey man, I like her. I created her. So
my dad has a connection to Brazil. That's actually the truth. So
yeah,
I really like the.
Well, so my
aspect.
In all fairness, right? I wasn't sure where I was gonna set this second story. Right when I first plotted it out, I had in mind absolutely my artist Doug Franchen, he actually lives in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I thought to myself, well, if Doug can pencil this, he would be awesome. He would be drawing his hometown. And so that was the kind of impetus behind it. Then, down the line, a different artist came on, but I was like, yeah, but the Brazil thing is still cool. It's still a good backdrop. But now that Doug's back on the story, it's even sweeter. So, Doug is going to be drawing his hometown kind of thing. So I think it'll be a very fun, kind of a crossover in a way, and you'll get some very authentic visuals. He's been showing me references for Sao Paulo to give me some ideas of what places are gonna kind of be featured in the story. So it's very cool, and he's definitely got an eye for visual storytelling and showing exactly what kind of going for what I'm going for there. So anyway, besides this cover, there are several others. There's Doug's cover, which is awesome. That's the movie poster cover, I like to call it. Then we've got the Green Eyes poster. This seems to be the iconic image of the campaign that everybody is gravitating towards. And I mean, I'm just saying this might be a good T-shirt. I mean, who knows? And then
it might be.
Well, no, it will be. It's just a matter of me getting off my ass and getting it made. And then this is the first campaign I've ever done with a ash can. Ash can, for you guys that don't know, is when they wanted to test out kind of a book and give a preview of it in the old days, especially back in the 90s, available at comic conventions, they would do just a kind of Xerox, and it would be 8.5 by 11, then folded in half. So it'd be that smaller size. So this is an ash can of a 20-page story written by me and drawn by Ivan F. Silva. It's a very cool story that kind of peels back the curtain on this character, Stillen. He was disintegrated in the first book, and he's back in the second book, and you get a kind of an understanding of what's going on with him a little bit in this story. So it kind of gives a little peek into his past. So that's a fun read, and it's been very successful. A lot of people are adding the ash can on as an add-on for some of the other perks. So that's been very kind of gratifying to see. And then just to kind of pull you aside here, Doorkickers 1 and 2. So for those of you that didn't get on the first book, that's the one you want, right? That gives you access to the first tier. This is a first printing of the original book. So the only difference is it has a little higher price point because we have to give the original backers a reason to be there originally. So as you can see, 43 claims. So this is another very popular one. A lot of people are discovering Doorkickers for the first time on this campaign, and so that's been very cool to see people pick that up. And then here's just some of the art you're going to see. I mean, so Doug doesn't know anything about tactical stuff, right? I mean, so as an artist, if you don't know anything, you have to go off a reference. And so I've been very kind of, giving him videos and photo reference to help him out. And Joe, I mean, I tell you, he has just knocked it out of the park. I mean, I could absolutely envision how a takedown like this would go. It would be quick. And the page previous that you don't miss is this they toss a 9-banger in the room, and it starts providing that distraction, and it starts to wake something up here in the first panel, and then they go in the door. So those guys never knew what hit them.
Nice.
Yeah. But then, those punks are out of the way and they run into something a little bigger, right? And then this is where Doorkickers takes a departure from a lot of the stuff that I know you guys talk about. Doorkickers is a very cool and kind of grounded military action kind of story, but it's also a horror story. So you've got these supernatural threats that these guys have to take down. And they've got some tools in their kit that'll help them out. Like, for instance, in the last book we had Stillen and his sword, and Rivas has these magic knives that he's able to employ to great effect, as you can see here. And so that's the end of the preview. I hope it's enough for people to have the full faith and credit in me to be able to, to make this happen. It's a fun story to write. It's an awesome. It's an awesome universe to sandbox to play in. So I've just been very happy with how everything turned out, and I'm looking forward maybe on the next book inviting some other writers into this sandbox to maybe throw around some story ideas and to kind of build out the world a little more. I love writing these stuff, but I can't help but think that other writers out there might be able to bring a different take to it. So who knows? It's not like I don't have a group of writers now that I'm hanging around with that might have ideas about that.
So, I don't know if you can see the comment, Sapper Spy. I'd love to make a variant cover. I'll put a shameless plug in for him. He did my last 2 covers.
Yeah, no, I tell you, the one of his that he did for you that I really like is the boom sling.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly very colorful. It gets your attention.
That design is awesome. Yeah, Sapper. Hey, I'll always take stuff on spec, man.
He also did my website. So
yeah, he's been on the channel before, man. He's a solid dude, and if anybody watches this and is in need of a graphic designer, definitely can't say enough nice things about Sapper Spy. Look him up on Twitter and hit him up. He's a good dude.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun to work with, and I joked with him offline, I guess, but sometimes I'm slightly abrasive, or I'm demanding it, and I have a short fuse, and he kind of pushed through all that because I was trying to hit, certain time marks and get things online posted, having to work through Amazon. It was just a pain in the ass, but he's a fantastic professional. He does really great work. Very responsive. Joe's got probably the same experience. So, applause, hit the applause button.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, that guy is good shit. But all right, well, so I've talked enough about my humble campaign. If anybody is watching this video and thinks that Doorkickers might be up their alley, please give it a look. And if you find something you think you might like in there, I appreciate that support. So it's going to be, I haven't been too vocal about this, but it will be renewed for another 30 days. So it will go, the active campaign will go for another 30 days. And then we will come to a close. We've already made our funding goal, which was $10,000. So what that'll trigger at the end of the second 30 days for it to go in demand. And so it'll be available kind of as a storefront. But one of the things I will say this, the advantages of backing it during the active campaign is that you will get more stuff. Some of these tiers will be adjusted to where less of the ancillary items will be available. So there is an advantage to backing during the, like some of the cards and, other posters and things like that won't be available. So yeah, get it while you can. All right. So let's, so one of the reasons why I like talking to you guys is you kind of see the world in a similar light that I do. And I, based on our backgrounds, I mean, all three of us here have a military background, and we all see the world, I think, in terms of threats and that kind of friction, right? Like the tornado that hit Mayfield was not necessarily a threat per se, but it sure, it's not like what we're seeing in Ukraine and China and things like that. But those people
Right.
tell them they didn't get hit by a bomb last night, and they'll call you a liar. I mean, 100.
Right.
I think they're saying upwards of almost 100 dead. At this point,
I think it's like
I think
85.
Confirmed, but
yeah, right. I mean, who knows? Like I said, who knows what it's eventually going to be? And like you said, Mike, 85.
Crazy.
Wow. I mean, so I'm from Kentucky, and I went to school actually not far from Mayfield in Murray, at Murray State, and so I know that area pretty well. Paducah, Mayfield is literally right in between Murray and Paducah. So our thoughts and prayers go out to those folks. And Joe, like we were talking about before we went live, I mean, everybody thinks about prepping for the end of the world, the zombie apocalypse, or whatever. But
Yeah.
A lot of times they forget that it's the smaller, more local things that they really need to.
Far more likely to happen, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
They're more likely to happen, and you're more likely to have to be ready for that. And that's why I say in my books, I said, don't prepare for an event. Don't say, I'm preparing for a Chinese invasion or I'm preparing for an EMP strike. Just prepare for the power to be out, there to be no food, and no one coming to help you. If you prepare for those things, you're in good shape no matter what happens, right?
Right.
And so I've got some friends right there in the middle of that whole situation, and he was prepared because that's just his philosophy, right? I'm going to be ready for the power to go out and there to be bad weather, and a lot of other people are not, and there's been some looting and some bad things going on in Bowling Green. So I don't know.
Well,
you just got to be ready for the effect, not for the event.
One of those, like a great example also is that, if the power goes out, I'll have my PV cells on my roof giving me power. Well, if a tornado hits, those PV cells may be in the next county over. So,
or a tree falls on them.
So that's the reason why you need to have that PACE plan, right? You need to have primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, right? Like you need to have more than one prep for the same type of thing. So this is where maybe having a generator and kind of concrete pad and a shed out back is a better call than PV cells, on the roof. So I mean, but maybe both is the right answer. So
and here's another thing that aside from disasters, barring any disasters, we're already having a propane shortage, and there is a ridiculous amount of people in America who heat their house with propane. So if you've spent all of your money and all of your preps and everything on these bigger issues, but you didn't figure out how else you were going to heat your house this winter, there doesn't need to be another disaster. The propane shortage is your disaster, and you were not ready for it.
You're right.
That's what gets me so worked up about the prepping community. It's just like Andrew just put here. They're stockpiling 10 years of food, 50,000 rounds of ammo, but then your house collapsed on it. You can't get at it. So what are you going to do?
Right.
You have to diversify a little bit. You can't. Everyone wants to have a gun and say they're prepared, but that's not it. There's a lot more to it.
No, you're spot on. And Mike, what are your thoughts on this whole kind of regional disaster like what we're seeing right now?
Well, I'd agree with Joe. I mean, there's certainly different ways to look at it. I had training with SEER as an example, so that's kind of my baseline, and it had a very specific kind of military application. You get stuck behind enemy lines. What are you going to do? But the general principles are very similar to the preparation type stuff that Joe prescribes. So some of the survival skills you may learn, which really would be, last case type things, but making fire, that's a very handy thing to know. If you're in Kentucky right now, and I was listening to radio, and yes, I think a lot of the people have been rounded up that they have found under the rubble, what have you. And they're in the school, whatever. But just imagine a very rural area. Maybe someone has not come to get you yet. Well, just being able to rip a few branch trees down and start a fire to keep warm on, one to signal, the emergency people to find you, but at the very least keep warm. I mean, so there's a lot of skills that I think I agree with Joe. You don't want to have it shoehorned into it's got to be this scenario. It's the zombie thing. No, it's a general rule of thumb. You just have other alternatives and other options that you can apply to whatever the hell it is that transfer to anything. Being able to build a fire is a good skill, period.
Yeah. I think the thing, Mike, that you're bringing up, and Joe, you were alluding to this too, is that if everything blows away and you lose it all, right? If you're stocked up and prepared with skills, no storm can blow that away, right? If you survive, then you've got your skills, right? Whether that's the knowledge to render first aid to your neighbors. Maybe it's, woodworking, so that in the days and weeks after this, you're able to do some carpentry work, for your neighbors and for yourself, to kind of get back where, a lot of, while I don't know how well you guys know that area, but it's very rural. And so, Bowling Green got hit, and that's a pretty good sized town. But outside of Bowling Green, between like Mayfield and Bowling Green, I mean, it's all country, right? And a lot of barns and a lot of agricultural stuff in that area.
And more likely than not, the emergency services that are provided by the municipality are going to be so overwhelmed so quickly. You're going to be on your own pretty much anyway. There's a good chance of it. So.
Yeah, so just having those skills to be value added. Okay, so maybe your house didn't get hit, but your neighbor's barn down the way got hit, and because of that, he's going to have a hard time with his livestock over the winter. Well, so how value added can you be to that neighbor so that he knows that you're a person of worth, and then he remembers that, and then so when something else happens on the line, he remembers Joe was a good dude, during that tornado hit. I bet he knows what's going on with this. The power just went out everywhere, and we've lost the internet.
Andrew has been saying stuff on the bottom of the screen. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. I've been posting those in there. So it says,
that's funny because my book mentions having a cache of supplies outside your normal perimeter for just such an occasion, right? You get overran, the building gets knocked down by wind. You know what? If all your supplies were in it, well, you just lost everything you had. Yeah. But if instead you had a cache that you could find right away, go dig it up. You got something.
You mean you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, Joe?
No.
Right. So I tell them, like, have a tote buried somewhere that's got a tent, a few days worth of food, and some fire making supplies. Just that bare minimum will get you through until somebody gets to you.
That's right.
Don't leave it in the house.
I have an adjunct, I guess, to that. However,
the evasion site.
I used to live in DC, and I had property. I still own property in West Virginia, and it's 75 miles away from my house. But I did have a cache site on my property, which I thought was very fiendishly cleverly hidden. Well, apparently it was not. Short story, and probably some neighborhood kids or whatever dug it up and took my shit. So yeah, have multiple, within the reasonable cost.
Yes, have multiple.
It's all about money, but diversification is a smart thing to do. When you count on something being there, their house, and it falls down upon your head, what are you gonna do now, Ranger?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the most important kind of diversification that we can do, if possible, is to diversify yourself out of the cities, right? Instead, the idea is, instead of living in a city and have a place 75 miles outside, why don't we just move 75 miles outside? And, maybe you have to commute a long time. And I know, Mike, you're in your situation, that may not be applicable, but, we're all seeing the total, decline of order in these big cities. And, I think it's almost a meme at this point. Get out of the cities, I mean.
I'll tell you, without rule of law actually exists in San Francisco and Los Angeles. There's literally no law.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. I left the DC area. I'm no longer there, and I'm very thankful. And someone on Twitter, I forgot who, was talking about, people don't realize how much crime is actually in DC. You do hear, say, Chicago. You hear about the gunfire in Chicago a lot through certain mediums. But this guy was just talking about DC. I mean, I don't disbelieve it at all. I when I lived in that area, I pretty much would not go into Baltimore. I'm just not going to go there. Thank you. I have no reason to. I have no desire to. But generally speaking, it's just getting to the point. Any city, I mean, that's the place not to be. It just, unless you're crazy. If you like that sort of thing, you want to wear skinny jeans, ride around a little electric scooter, that's a great place for you. Have fun. But
DC is an interesting juxtaposition, right? Because it is both violent and lawless, but also very lawful and controlled. I mean, in the kind of the enclave of the federal government area, you guys know what I'm talking about, in that area where, like a lot of famous monuments are, and you've got, a lot of big business, a lot of headquarters are located in those areas. I remember we're in the Siemens USA, you literally, out one of the main windows, you could see the Capitol. It was like a half a mile away from the Siemens headquarters, right? So there's a lot of money and a lot of security in these areas. But outside of those areas, in DC, where a lot of the folks live, man, it's rough.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, a lot of people don't realize that DC is kind of
it was ever
tale of two cities. What's that?
Yeah. So I don't think that was ever really intended to be a city that people lived in, right? It just happened that way.
Right.
And it's just, it's sad to see it that way.
It's almost to the point where I think that DC, outside of literally a very kind of small federal enclave, and we know exactly where that is, I think the rest of DC should be incorporated into Maryland, and then eliminate all representation, from that city, because the main population areas would be,
You mean rather than creating a 51st state, which is what they desire?
Man. That's making DC and Puerto Rico and a couple of these others, states, Guam, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's literally unconstitutional to make DC a state. It literally says in the Constitution, not part of any state.
That's why it's the District of Columbia. right?
That's exactly right.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's funny.
Stop telling us about all these smart ideas that you read in the Constitution. Nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway, no, there's just some interesting stuff going on, and we had that disaster in Kentucky, and I wanted to bring that up with you guys. Joe, you and I have been kind of going back and forth, and not in a contentious way, but very much usually agreeing with each other on Twitter about what's been going on in the Ukraine. And then, if you that's a kind of a looking at one specific area, but then if you think about how that works with, areas like China and some of our other hotspots, they're disconnected, but they're also linked, right? So, and I know, Mike, you probably have some, just from your books, I know you're thinking about this stuff a lot. It's almost like you've got some inside information on what's going to happen.
Almost like I read the newspaper. Yeah, I was going to say, shameless plug, I guess. It's ironic, and this particular discussion, you specifically said Ukraine and China.
Mm-hmm.
And first thing I'll ask Joe, you did receive your books, right?
I did.
Okay.
I did. It's sitting actually literally right here.
Okay. So of those two topics for this discussion, Ukraine, China, Ukraine is very specifically written about in some detail in the Baltic chain. And then the China one, so we're talking, that's book number 3. And then book number 4 just happens to be Boomslang Gambit, which is all China. So I guess I'm biased on this discussion. I really can't talk a lot.
Well, I really think that Ukraine is going to be spoken of in the same veins that we would mention Franz Ferdinand, right? Eventually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The anthill that got kicked over and kicked it all off. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
seriously. And there's really no downside. If your name is Vladimir, you don't have a downside here. Everyone already hates you. Everyone already has sanctions against you. What are you going to do? Issue another travel ban on Vladimir Putin, who doesn't go anywhere anyway?
Mm.
You're going to tell them they can't buy products that they already don't buy?
Yeah, I prescribe a slightly different alternative, which
I'm sure you do.
Vladimir would not like, nor would Jinping, whatever his name is in China. And I really dislike a lot to read the newspaper, the route that we're going down with. Well, I guess one of the things I've read, our country, our administration is considering the right thing to do is to make a concession to, say, the Donbass Oblast, right? We're gonna slice off this piece of Ukraine to appease Putin. We're going to give all those Russian nationalists that little slice, just this tiny slice of Ukraine, not the whole thing. We're just going to cut this piece off and hand it over to Russia. That's one of the
Crimea, right?
Right. So we let them, annex Crimea under the Obama administration, and here we are.
Under the Obama administration, part 3.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, I'm not sure, but I think Joe Biden was the vice president of that.
I heard something like that.
Like that. So it's not a shocker, but I mean, that literally is one of the diplomatic solutions is give them what they want, a little piece of time, just a slice at a time.
That's naive because it neglects the 1938 Munich Agreement, right?
Yeah. I'm not being sarcastic enough.
It's seriously, it's the same thing. Let's just give them Czechoslovakia and everything will be fine.
I think it was Ted Cruz. He wrote a thing out, this whole deal about the concession, and I said, Neville, hello, Neville, you there, Neville? I mean, this really does sound very, very familiar, and it didn't go well the first time. It went very badly the first time. So we're back at that. We don't learn from history.
Well, one of the interesting takes, like when the whole Ukraine thing started going down to me, I was watching it live, right? I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I was not I
So,
was probably not as
so Scott, when you first started watching, what year are you talking about?
So I'm talking about when the Maidan protest
So
started.
2014.
Yeah, 2014. That's when those
Yeah.
protests started, and then it went into 15.
Right.
Which is really well. 2014 is when the shooting war started. 2013 is when the Maidan happened. So right. So I was watching 2013 with all those protests, and then I just recently watched that documentary on Netflix about that. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I can't remember the name of it.
Let me make a point about this. What about the Maidan and into 2014 is different than the situation we had during the transition to Donald Trump? Scale.
Well,
the only thing.
So right. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that it was after the fact, after the Civil War had kind of frozen along the the DNR borders and had solidified and all that kind of stuff. I started reading. I don't know if you guys are aware of John Mersheimer. He's a international relations expert out of the University of Chicago. He's what's called a offensive realist, right? And his ideas on just so happens, by the way, that at the time that all this stuff was going on, I was getting my master's in international relations. And so he wrote a piece, I think, in 2014, kind of late 2014, that kind of explained from his point of view how all this stuff happened and what happened. Well, his point of view was not from the standpoint of like, well, the Ukrainians were oppressed and then they revolted. And then they were successfully wrest control of their government, and then they pushed back against Russian separatists who, were a response to the Ukrainian nationalists taking over, which is the kind of the typical narrative that you see in the West, right? What he talked about was the essential coup that occurred, brought upon by the Obama administration and the kind of encroachment into the natural, what Russia calls their near abroad, right? Ukraine is part of their near abroad, which are essentially the border, the states that border them, especially the former Soviet republics. And so when we did these things, we set into motion the events that occurred and pushed, and essentially we provided a material threat to Russia. And Russia responded, within their sphere of influence in a more direct way than what we chose. We were being very kind of in the background and very much subversive.
That.
We did. If you did you read my article about this just the other day?
I may have missed it.
I spelled this out. So in 2008, this all began with an offer of membership in NATO to Georgia and the Ukraine. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes back a while.
So Georgia has, or the Ukraine has an election where Yanukovych gets in power, right? And he's friendly to Russia, so Russia's cool at the moment. But in Georgia, it's the other way. They wanted to go to NATO. So what was Putin's last option? Right. He invaded, because then if his troops were on their soil, they couldn't join NATO because that would obligate NATO.
He invaded Georgia.
Yeah, that's what I
yeah, Georgia, right. Well, and Saakashvili, I can't remember. I think that was his name. Yeah, Saakashvili. Yeah, he was the president, and he thought NATO had his back, and so he did some. He fucked around, and he found out very quickly that we didn't have his back. Like we weren't gonna, Article 5 Georgia just because, we were friendly.
We offered it, but look at though. They only had 10 days worth of war. Russia used the false justification of events in South Ossetia, but they also invaded in Abkhazia, and now they control the coastline of Georgia on the Black Sea. And the troops are still there today. There's no more fighting, but he got what he wanted. There is no longer a NATO thing, right? So they're still out of NATO. He's happy. Now they have the revolution in Russia. I mean, in Ukraine.
In Ukraine, yeah.
forced their hand. Now he has to go this other route.
Yeah. Hey, Joe,
yeah. Go ahead,
when you read the Baltic Chain, you obviously have, I think, more intimate knowledge of this very specific subject, Georgia, that. So be kind. I did cherry pick some. I mean, everything I put in there is absolute fact, but it doesn't cover everything. There are probably little nuances in there that weren't convenient for me to make. I'm going to do X, Y, Z, because of this. So be very kind.
I will. But the thing is that the point I guess I'm trying to make is that Russia plays the long game, except when they can't. And Russia's not afraid to play the short game.
Sure.
Because everyone already hates them. Everyone already sanctions them.
Sure. But we are stupid enough to allow it and not understand what they're, yes, we do understand. There are people in our country that are not dumbasses. The Chinese are not these visionary, 99% of the time it's because we've elected people that then have whatever viewpoint and they shoehorn everything into it. It's not that there are, the intelligence community, whatever, all those dumbasses, they don't know anything. Yeah, they probably do. They are either too afraid to tell the truth because they know their livelihood is going to go out the window. So they tell what someone wants to hear. Yeah, but we're we don't have that many stupid people in our country. It just comes out that it looks that way. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, no, I mean there are some sharp cookies over here, but unfortunately there are a lot of people who think they're sharp cookies that aren't, and a lot of times they're pulling the levers of power. And so, like, if you guys can see, I'm sharing the article now. And I've got this for you. If you guys are interested in reading it, I put the link in the private chat, and I may even post this on Twitter because I think it's worth reading again. And I just love the title of this, and it's really when I read this title, I liked his kind of worldview before I read this, but when I read this title, I was just like, what? Why is it our fault? And and I read this article and it really woke me up to like, well, there's more going on than what we like to think.
Well, and that's why I wrote
I think that's what Joe was saying.
When I wrote in my article, I said that, it's very easy to believe all of the media stories that say Vladimir Putin's a bad guy and he wants this, that, and the other, and he's just an evil man. But when you remove all of that emotion and you look at the objective facts, it's not Vladimir Putin's fault. It is entirely our fault. We provoked it. We put it where it is, and we continue to do things that invite this kind of trouble. And seriously, if we say, yeah, you guys can have the Donbass, he's going to come up with another reason to move further east and further west in another week. I mean, it's just something needs to be done about it. But Putin's not an evil guy. He's probably the most honest man in international politics because he will tell you when he's stabbing you in the back. He's like, yeah, I stabbed you in the back and I'm going to do it again. He does what's right for his country. And
I don't want to invoke, the bad word Trump, but I mean, I think that
Trump. I will tell you that.
I think that is why Trump enjoyed conversations with Putin, or however you want to characterize that little dynamic is, and he said it something like, well, Putin's doing what is good for his country.
Yep.
I am doing what I think is good for my country. And he recognized that. He recognized exactly what you just said, Joe. And that he formulated his plans and policies kind of in that reality, but you're right. I think if we let him say, take Donbass, whatever, okay, that was last week. What are you going to do for me lately? What's next?
Just remember, actually, if they were just to legitimize Donbass and that's it, that's actually not losing much because they don't have Donbass already. I mean, they've lost it. The DNR. I guess it's LNR and DNR. Which is kind of called the Donbass as a single region. Mm-hmm. They've lost that. 7 years ago. That has never really after the line stabilized in late 2014.
Who
I mean,
lost? They who?
Well, the Ukraine
Yeah.
lost that region. I mean, the Russian troops are in the Donbass today. If they were to just, essentially formally give, and they're passing out Russian citizenship, so passports and everything like that to all the people who live there. So if they were to just kind of formalize that, from the Russian side, I don't think that that's a big hit. I think it's a big hit to maybe Ukrainian nationalists. But other than that,
it's just a big hit today. It's a big hit in a week when he goes, okay, that was cool. Thank you.
Right.
But by the way, I had Crimea. Now I have Donbass. Now I want the next one.
Right.
Well, no,
I'd agree with Joe. I think this is a self-looking ice cream cone. If you make concessions to someone who is imperialistic, it's just not going to stop.
I hear what you guys are saying. I'm just drawing a distinction between having to roll the troops out and start fighting versus basically, well, we have the DNR right now. We're just going to declare it Russia, and so no new fight occurs. If anything, it may, because Russia gives the DNR legitimacy, it actually may stop the fighting that's going on daily there.
The problem is the public statements made by the EU, the UK, and us last week that said that we would defend the territorial integrity of the Ukraine. That's not as it stands today. That's as it is written in international law, which is both Luhansk and Donbass, both of them, right?
Well, but Joe, you got to read between the lines. They're not saying that, if Russia declares the DNR and the LNR Russian territory, if they were to do that, we're not going to invade and we're not going to support the Ukraine.
We're not, but both Sweden and the United Kingdom said that they will.
Now, see, that's just it. I think the way I read all that is that if Putin sends tanks into Ukrainian territory that is not already occupied by Russian forces, i.e. DNR and things like that, then that they would, step up to the plate and support Ukraine's, the territory that they actually control. That's what I think. I mean, if they just let it happen, I agree with you. That is appeasement, and that's going to make, because Joe, you and I talked about this on Twitter. I mean, the Crimea is in a water shortage, right? And what they need really is that kind of coast of, off the Sea of Azov that kind of would connect Crimea with the DNR. And so which includes the town of Mariupol. So they want to take that whole kind of corridor, basically square square that corner off, so that now that's what I think is likely that could actually happen.
And before the ceasefire, that's where the heaviest fighting was around that city.
Yeah, well, right. And it's about, I guess the lines are about 15K, if I remember correctly, from Mariupol. So, I mean, it's within artillery range already. But anyway, the point is that, if those Russian tanks have to roll over Ukrainian soldiers to get to, to take that land, then that is something new. And I think NATO, I think here's what I think may happen. I think NATO members may step in to help Ukraine, but I don't think NATO will. I don't think NATO is going to pull the Article 5 because
I totally agree. But the other problem we have is, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the first thing is, I mean, that Ukraine is not in NATO, right?
Right.
They are not. So there is no obligation at all.
They're a partner, but not a member.
Right. But so there's no obligation by Article 5, whatever it is, at all for there to be a NATO response. So with that said, it would be, I think, pretty unlikely. Just very unlikely.
Well, the other problem we have is that, much like Saakashvili in Georgia, Poroshenko's been kind of playing a little bit tighter than he should. So last weekend, they were lobbing shells towards the Russian positions, right?
Yeah, they were poking
and they were because they're like, hey, we got all this support.
Right.
Let's a little bit of that 155 we've got stored up and start lobbing some things out of our D30s. And that's not going to help, because even if the scenario you envision happens where Russia just takes what they have, Russia's not going to let that artillery position remain where it is. They're going to flatten it first.
Right. I think that's if they are able to claim the DNR without a major shooting war kind of breaking out over it, then I think, if anything, that actually may stabilize the region, because, then instead of, the kind of Russians and that are actually there, then it would be a formalized presence, and then that would force the, Jim Cox in the chat is calling you out. I think he takes umbrage to you thinking that the D-30 shoots a 155 shell and not a 130.
Yeah. I don't think in comm block anymore. You're right. It's a 130, but I said 155 because we tend to lob. So
no. Well, but no, I think. But I think your point. I think your point is apt. I mean, so let's play out the scenario. Russia claims the DNR, and they said this: we're going to claim this formally as Russia. We're going to annex this section. Ukraine responds to that, and for the first 48 hours, the West does nothing, and so then the Ukraine responds by increasing some shelling, right, prior to the actual Russian troops kind of taking up that border. And then the Russians take umbrage to that and then say, well, fuck it. If you guys are going to do that, that's a provocation. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go and roll over Mariupol and connect the Crimea and the DNR. And so you see how that, that kind of, that, if we do nothing, if the NATO countries say they're going to protect the Ukraine territory, but then do nothing, it's kind of like they're talking themselves into, and you're right. Putin is all about what's best for Russia, and he will take, if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile.
Yeah.
He'll take everything he thinks he can take, right? And then I could see. And here's the bigger danger, right? And this is where we were talking about how Ukraine is kind of like look at this thing over here. This is really important, and forget about all this other stuff. When Putin rolls tanks across the border, and Poland and the UK, respond tepidly because they don't have all of NATO behind them, and the Baltic states, who aren't in a position to actually send troops, they vocally support, but aren't able to send troops, and Germany basically acts like nothing's happening, and maybe Romania sends logistic support, and Bulgaria does the same thing. When that happens, then all of a sudden the kind of the willingness to fight NATO starts to go down. Russia is still, and by then Russia's already connected those two pieces of land and probably has their strategic goals. Then who's watching this, right? And so this kind of goes back to Andrew S.'s comment earlier, odds of Putin and Xi launching simultaneous invasions. I think the odds are very low. I do not believe they are coordinating directly.
This is my opinion. That's what I was going to address, is that if Putin acts and it causes enough of a disruption and a distraction, then Xi might do something. If not, if Scott's scenario plays out, then no, nothing else happens. But if there's actual shooting between NATO forces and Russia, and it's drawn everything in, there's no downside to China not acting.
Well, so I think. Go ahead, Mike.
I guess the only thing that I'm saying I disagree, but when I see simultaneously, I go, well, you can achieve essentially the same thing if you're China. If this distraction is over there at Ukraine, I do not have to act right now, this exact moment in time, to take Taiwan. I mean, just I mean, this is going to go for years. It's not going to be, just a 30-day thing. So that's the only way I kind of look at it. It's like, well, that might kick in the plans that they have, in a year, in 6 months, 18 months, they would then, throw those plans into play and use that huge distraction and try to slip this under the radar sort of thing. So it doesn't necessarily, they can achieve the same effect without necessarily doing it simultaneously, and then the whole world comes down on them for this collaboration between the two big bullies. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways of just slice and dice how to do it.
A lot of people think they're a lot closer friends than they really are. Russia and China are not friends by really any stretch of the means of the word. They're not bosom buddies. They don't necessarily get along that well.
Yeah.
So
from time to time, their interests align.
Yes.
I did want to. This kind of stimulates the broader discussion. Yeah, we can talk about Donbass and Crimea. What I did with my whole series of books was I kind of looked at, and this is still not perfect, but as an example, I guess, I look at China, Russia, Iran, and Turkey as one big system. They're all kind of, when it's convenient, they have a lot of different things going on that's good for them. And your dog is agreeing with me vehemently.
I know, she's like, Mike is right.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, that's kind of why that was the basis of the book. I mean, I like that question, just the thought process of, well, what if China does X and Russia does it? I mean, that really is the way we've got to see the world, where those four countries, as example, have been creating an alliance while we've been fighting counter-terrorist wars in Afghanistan and Iraq.
That's Mark Sibley's book right there in a nutshell, by the way.
Pardon me?
But
who?
Mark Sibley's book.
Yeah.
Mongol Moon is about exactly that.
Yeah, I read that. Mine is fiction, yes. And it, somewhat convenient the way the things that I attack and what I do, realistically, at the end of the day, I've read them already and they're out. But I'm thinking, what I prescribe in discrete little clumps, book by book by book, would that cause World War III? It's probably at least 50-50, But give me a break. It's fiction. It's fun stuff. Right. But still, we got to look at all these things, how they play together before we take some kind of action.
Yeah.
If the president just says, "Hey, just chop that piece of Donbass off and give it to Russia and it'll go away," that's unwise, because
it's going to spark territorial disputes all over the world.
Yeah, sure.
But let's remember who we're dealing with here.
That's true.
I think that's the easy button for Joe Biden, right? For the former vice president, that's something that he can easily do. To kind of, maybe this will all go away, right?
And it'll show American leadership.
Yeah.
Neville.
Before we get to Andrew's point here, let me just kind of put my two thoughts on what you guys have been opining on here. Here's what I think, right? NATO is less important to China than the U.S. is. And so ultimately, it's not necessarily the NATO action and the NATO war that would break out in Ukraine. It's more like, how is the U.S. backing this, right? Mm-hmm. If the U.S. is full-throated, if NATO says, hey, listen, we're going to offer partnership or membership to Ukraine, and as soon as they accept it, they'll be a full-fledged member of NATO. That would be the kind of fait accompli that I could see NATO doing to try to, back Russia down. The whole Article 5 comes into play at that point. If the U.S. were fully throated behind that, and then they became part of NATO, and then things developed from that standpoint, I think what China would look at is how decisive we were in our support for the Ukraine, specifically the U.S. If we allowed NATO to kind of do everything, but then we just kind of stand back because we don't really want to get into a ground war in Europe, you got some advisors preparing troops, deploying, and we're hanging out in Western Ukraine, then I think China would see that as weakness. And I think that they would potentially say, well, if they're not going to help out a NATO member, by sending armored divisions over there, then they're sure as hell not going to help out Taiwan. Yeah. And so, in a way, I think being fully invested in a NATO war in Ukraine, it actually is almost better for us, because what I see him thinking, Andrew thinking, is that if we get involved over in Europe, then we'll be too distracted to, you know.
I mean, part of the
But
reason why
I think it's the decisiveness of how we commit ourselves, because ultimately, if they were to invade Taiwan, they would be worried that we would decisively act,
or the decisiveness with which we distribute across 2, 3, 4 fronts. Right. You know, we're in this position. And this is kind of why I include Turkey. And it's not really Turkey; it's Erdogan, right? It's really only been since Erdogan's been around, since they have become a problem. But like Andrew's saying, yeah, but if we distribute not a maybe, a decisive, we're only going to allocate X to NATO because this is a NATO fight. If that is explained very forcefully for everyone to hear, to include NATO, is we're not going to get sucked into this conflagration. We're only going to do this, and put a box around it, so we can then preserve a reserve for a China, Taiwan kind of thing. Because some of this is going on because everyone's watching us. We're fully invested in counterterrorism, CT operations, and all kinds of other things are going on. The first time Russia rolled into Georgia, what was ours? Well, we couldn't do anything because we're over in Afghanistan, we're over in Iraq, and we're up to our ass in trouble in those. And these guys are watching that. North Korea is watching that.
I want to thank both of you guys for coming on, because I know, and we need to continue this conversation at a later date, because the experience that we have, I think we could definitely go on, and we haven't even talked about Africa and really what's going on in Syria and a lot of these other hotspots that are all in Iran. Forget about it. So anyway, let's go ahead and cut it at this point. We've gone an hour and 15, 16 minutes. So that's a great, we had people consistently watching the whole time. I think this is a topic that is interesting to folks. And so maybe we need to figure out something, specific to this on a semi-regular basis, because there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot of updates. So anyway, Joe, do you want to let people know where they can find you and if you got anything going on?
You can find me on Twitter at DolioJ, or you can find me at tactical-wisdom.com.
Right
yeah, it's right
there.
There. You also find me at tactical-wisdom.com. My books are available there, the first 2. I don't have any. Everybody else is getting their copies of book 3 from Amazon. Amazon hates authors, so I don't have any copies of book 3 to sell on my own site yet. Maybe sometime in the middle of 2022 I'll get some, but go check it out. You can find me.
And Mike, what do you got going on? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I just changed my name tag thing, so it's at Colonel Mike Bennett 1 on Twitter. So you find me there. You can look for kind of Mike Bennett Colonel. I'm on Facebook just for pictures. That's Andrew. Okay. You confused me, Andrew. That's not me. Yeah, gotcha.
Andrew just wants to get in on the
And on Amazon. So if you look up the author Mike Bennett, you look up a title of the book like The Baltic Chain or Boomslang Gambit, the Zangezur campaign. There I am. There's 5, 6 books right there. But I don't have a website, and I've already been told that's a deficiency on my part by a couple of people. So I guess that's a next year objective to meet.
Well, and then of course you guys know I've got the Doorkickers closing up today. As soon as I get off here, I'm going to go ahead and extend the time for another 30 days. So you've got another 30 days to jump in, but you only have a couple more hours if you want to get in on that painted Gigna cover by my artist Zevius. And you can find me here. Of course, this is the Writer's Fix Problems. If you're not subscribed already, please do. I'm at M. Scott McCullough with no H at Twitter and M. Scott McCullough with an H at the end on Instagram. So I appreciate you guys joining us. Joe, Mike, thanks for coming in. I look forward to more extending this conversation at a later date. There's a lot to talk about. So
Yeah, it's fun.
for my two guests, I'd like to say thank you for joining us and have a good day.
Thank you, sir.